Clean water isn't an app you download. It's a chemistry set that can kill a city if you get the mix wrong. My name is Bernard Kozlowski, but everyone calls me Bernie. I'm 59 years old, and for 32 of those years, I made sure the water that came out of every tap in this city was safe enough for my own grandkids to drink. That was my only metric. Not spreadsheets, not synergy, not digital transformation. Just that. 2 days before the humiliation, I was standing on the catwalk above clarifier number 3, listening. You can learn more from the sound of a 60-year-old pump than from any sensor array a kid with a laptop can install. The hum was a fraction of a tone sharp. A bearing, probably. I made a note. It could wait until the scheduled maintenance next Tuesday, but it couldn't be forgotten. Forgetting is how things break. That was my world. A world of groaning machinery, the faint, clean smell of chlorine, and the institutional memory of a system that had been kludged together, upgraded, and jury-rigged since the Eisenhower administration. I knew every valve, every pipe, every electrical quirk. I had written most of the manuals myself, in 3-ring binders now gathering dust in a forgotten corner of the control room. The meeting was in the new city manager's office. He was a political appointee, a man whose primary qualification was a large check written to the mayor's re-election campaign. He wasn't the problem, not directly. He was just the guy who opened the door for the problem to walk in. The problem's name was Tyler Pembroke. He was 26 years old. He sat behind a sterile white desk that looked like it had been delivered that morning. Behind him, a massive, ostentatiously framed diploma from Yale's School of Management hung on the wall, perfectly centered. He wore gray Vori joggers that probably cost more than my work boots, a crisp black t-shirt, and an Apple Watch Ultra. His hands were soft, manicured. They had never held a pipe wrench. They had never been stained with grease or scraped raw trying to turn a frozen valve in the middle of a January blizzard. He didn't look at me when I came in. He was staring at his laptop, his face illuminated by the glow of a spreadsheet. The city manager, a nervous man named Harris, gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. "Bernie," Harris started, his voice thin. "This is Tyler Pembroke. He's our new director of municipal optimization." Optimization. There it was. The first buzzword. I'd spent my life building and maintaining. This kid was here to optimize me. A cold, heavy feeling settled in my gut. It wasn't fear. It was the quiet certainty of a collision you see coming from a mile away. Tyler finally looked up. His eyes were flat, disinterested. He had the practiced, empty confidence of someone who has never been told no. "Mr. Kozlowski," he said, his voice devoid of any inflection. He wasn't addressing a person. He was addressing a line item. As you know, the city is undergoing a significant operational realignment. We're shifting toward a more agile, data-driven paradigm. I said nothing. I just stood there, my hands clasped behind my back, a habit from my 4 years in the Navy. Let him talk. Let him unwind the rope he was about to hang himself with. "Your tenure has been noted," he continued, glancing at the screen. 32 years is a long time. But the fact is, the future of this utility is digital. It requires a certain fluency with modern platforms, with predictive analytics, with smart infrastructure. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. A fluency you lack. He said it so plainly, with such dismissive ease. He might as well have been telling me the weather. He had no concept of what I did, what I knew. The knowledge in my head couldn't be ported to a cloud server. It was a messy, analog archive of sounds, smells, and vibrations. It was the memory of the 2003 blackout, when I and 2 other men kept the pumps running on backup generators by manually balancing the load, a feat that wasn't in any textbook. "Therefore," Tyler said, his eyes flicking back to his script, "we are moving in a new direction. Your position as Chief Water Treatment Operator is being eliminated as part of this restructuring. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Harris, the city manager, flinched. He wouldn't meet my eye. He was just furniture in the room. I didn't move. I didn't argue. I didn't list my accomplishments or plead for the job I had given my life to. In that moment, a dead calm settled over me. He thought he was cutting dead weight. He didn't realize he was cutting the brake lines. I understand, I said. My voice was steady. Tyler seemed momentarily surprised by my lack of protest. He probably had a whole script prepared for an emotional outburst. He recovered quickly. Good. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. You'll have 20 minutes. Your final paycheck and severance details will be mailed to you? He gestured vaguely toward the door. Human Resources has the paperwork. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet. I took out my plant access keycard, the one with my faded photo from 15 years ago. I took the brass key to the main pump house off my keyring. I laid them on the corner of his pristine white desk, next to a ridiculously expensive-looking silver pen. The clink of the key on the polished surface was the only sound in the room. You won't need security, I said. I turned and walked out. Harris scurried after me into the hallway. Bernie, I'm sorry. My hands were tied. It was the council. This new budget. I just looked at him, a man of no conviction, a leaf in the wind. You'll regret this, Harris, I said, not as a threat, but as a simple statement of fact. Then I walked away, down the hall I had walked for more than 3 decades, for the last time. As I walked toward the parking lot, past the towering water tank with the city's name painted on it, a thought solidified in my mind. Tyler Pembroke, MBA, Director of Municipal Optimization, had done his homework. He'd read my employee file. He knew my age, my salary, my lack of a college degree. He saw a legacy cost. But what he hadn't done, what his data-driven paradigm had failed to account for, was the one piece of paper that mattered more than his Yale diploma. He hadn't checked the State of Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy Registry for active certifications. Big difference. If you love stories about underdogs who refuse to stay down, and the sweet justice that comes when experience meets arrogance, hit that like button and subscribe right now. You won't want to miss how this plays out. Back in 1995, the plant was undergoing a major overhaul. We were installing the first generation of computer-controlled systems, what they called SCADA. Everyone was excited about automation, but my mentor, a man named Stanislaw Rycek, was skeptical. Stan had been at the plant since 1958. He'd seen it all. One afternoon, he found me in the break room, studying the schematics for the new digital controllers. He sat down across from me, his lunchbox squeaking as he opened it. Looks fancy, Bernie, he said, nodding at the diagrams. It is, Stan. It'll automate the whole primary treatment process. No more manual adjustments. Stan took a bite of his sandwich. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully. Automation is great, he said after a moment, until it isn't. Computers don't like lightning strikes. They don't like power surges. And they have no idea what to do when the turbidity of the raw lake water suddenly changes because of a storm over the bay. He pointed a thick finger at the old, hulking buildings, to the east of the main facility. Building C. You see that over there? That's the old lime soda softening system. They want to decommission it. I told them not to. I told them to keep it as a backup for peak demand. The lime soda system was a beast, a relic from the 1920s. It was pure industrial alchemy, a complex cantankerous process of mixing precise amounts of lime and soda ash to precipitate calcium and magnesium carbonates out of the water. It was inefficient and labor-intensive, but it could process a massive volume of water, far more than the modern membrane filters could handle during a summer demand spike. They'll forget how it works, Stan said, his voice quiet. These new kids, they learn on screens. They don't learn with their hands. They won't know the chemistry. He leaned forward. The state is phasing out the old certifications for these systems. They call it the Class A Master Operator License. There are only a handful of us left who have it. You need to get it, Bernie. But they're mothballing the system, Stan. For now, he said, but it's still on the books, and the law is the law. Michigan DEQ Regulation 325, Section 11C. Any plant with an operational lime soda ash system of this capacity must have a Class A certified operator on staff, not a contractor. On staff. Paperwork is armor, kid. Get the certification. One day, you'll be the only one who has the key, and they won't even know there's a lock. So I did it. It took me a year of studying Stan's old notes and textbooks from the 1950s. The exam was brutal. It wasn't about multiple choice questions. It was about handwritten chemical equations and long-form essays on flocculation and sedimentation under variable pH conditions. I was the last person in the state to take and pass that exam before they discontinued it. I framed the certificate. It hung in my small, cluttered office, next to a photo of my wife, Helen, and our son, Michael, at his high school graduation. Tyler Pembroke probably saw it when he peeked into my office before firing me. He probably saw it as just another piece of old paper on the wall of a man he considered a fossil. He didn't read the fine print. I got home around 3 in the afternoon. Helen was in the garden, tending to her prize-winning roses. She saw my 1998 Chevy S10 pull in and looked at her watch, a confused expression on her face. I never came home before 6. "Bernie, is everything all right?" she asked, pulling off her gardening gloves. I didn't want to tell her. Not yet. It would just make her worry. For 32 years, my job had been the bedrock of our lives. It paid for the mortgage on this house. It put Michael through college at Michigan State. It was our certainty. They're doing some upgrades on the main electrical panel. Sent the day shift home early, I lied. It tasted like ash in my mouth. I hated lying to her. I went to the garage. My Chevy sat there, its paint faded, a small dent in the rear fender from a rogue shopping cart years ago. A proud union member sticker was peeling on the bumper. That truck was like me. Old, reliable, not pretty, but it started every damn morning. I didn't tinker with the engine or organize my tools. I went to a locked metal cabinet in the corner. Inside, beneath old service manuals for a John Deere mower I no longer owned, was a thick binder. The title on the spine read, MIDEQ Water Treatment Regulations. I took it to my workbench, sat on a stool, and opened it. I flipped past the sections on modern filtration and UV disinfection until I found the chapter on legacy systems. And there it was. Section 325.11c. Stan's words came back to me, clear as day. Any public water utility serving a population over 50,000 and maintaining an auxiliary lime soda ash softening system for peak demand must retain on its permanent staff a state-certified Class A master water treatment operator. Retain on its permanent staff. Not a consultant. Not a temporary hire. An employee. I took a yellow highlighter and drew a neat, straight line under the entire paragraph. Then I closed the binder. The trap was set. All it needed was the bait. And I knew the bait would be a summer heat wave. The next week was strange. I woke up at my usual 5 a.m., the habit of decades ingrained in my bones. But there was nowhere to go. I drank my coffee, read the paper. Helen knew something was wrong, but she didn't press. She knew I'd tell her when I was ready. I spent the days in the garden. I weeded the tomato patch. I fixed the loose board on the back deck. I did all the little jobs I'd been putting off for years. It was quiet. Too quiet. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned to respond to alarms and urgent calls, was on edge. On Wednesday, my number 2, a good man named Dave Miller called my personal cell. I was thinning out my carrots. I saw his name on the screen and let it go to voicemail. He was a capable operator, but he was a product of the modern system. He knew the computers. He didn't know the chemistry, not the old school way. not the art of it. He left a message. Hey Bernie, it's Dave. Look, we've got a weird pressure fluctuation in the southeast quadrant. The SCADA system isn't flagging anything, but it just doesn't feel right. Call me when you get a chance. I deleted the message. It wasn't my problem anymore. This was the first domino. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine, a retired pipe fitter I play cards with, that Tyler Pembroke was making his mark. He'd sent out a flurry of emails filled with corporate jargon. He announced a new synergy task force and mandated weekly progress scrum meetings. He hired a consulting firm for $92,000 to map our core competencies and identify opportunities for digital transformation. They walked around the plant with iPads, taking pictures and looking confused. They spent all of 10 minutes in Building C, dismissing the massive lime soda softeners as obsolete infrastructure. Tyler was making decisions from a script written in a business school classroom. He was ignoring the boring, dusty paperwork. He was so focused on the shiny new digital interface that he never once looked at the century-old foundation it was built upon. He assumed authority equaled control. The breaking point came a week later. The local news channel started talking about it on Monday. A major heat wave was rolling in from the plains. Record-breaking temperatures expected by Friday, the meteorologist said cheerfully. Everyone stay hydrated. I looked at my tomato plants, already starting to wilt a little in the afternoon sun. Hydration. The whole city would be demanding it. The sprinklers would come on. The pools would be filled. Water demand would surge. The modern membrane filters could handle the baseline load, but they couldn't handle the peak. Not without help. By Friday morning, the temperature was already 92 degrees at 10 a.m. The air was thick and heavy. I was on my knees, mulching my garden beds, when my phone rang again. It was Dave. I ignored it. A minute later, it rang again. Ignored. A third time. Then a text message popped up. Bernie, please call me. We have to fire up the lime soda system, and the turbidity is off the charts. Alarms are going off everywhere. Pembroke is here, and he's losing his mind. I put the phone down on the grass next to me and continued spreading mulch. Inside the plant, I could picture the scene perfectly. The main control room, a place I knew better than my own living room, would be chaos. The digital displays for the primary system would be green, showing everything was fine, but the alarms would be coming from the auxiliary panel for Building C. The turbidity meter would be in the red. The pH sensors would be screaming. Tyler would be standing there, staring at the screens, his face pale. He'd be barking orders at Dave. What's the problem? Just fix it. Follow the procedure in the manual. And Dave, a good union man who knew the rules, would finally have to tell him the truth. There's no manual for this, Mr. Pembroke. Bernie was the manual. He did it by feel, by sight. And besides, we can't legally run this system without him. What are you talking about, legally? Tyler would snap, his voice tight with panic and rage. Union rules, state law, DEQ regulations. You need a Class A master operator on site to run this system. We don't have one. That would be the moment. The moment the spreadsheet hit the fan. The moment Tyler Pembroke's data-driven paradigm collided with the unyielding reality of a 60-year-old pipe and a 30-year-old law. The moment he realized his authority was a hollow shell. He could give all the orders he wanted, but he couldn't make the water clean. The calls started an hour later. First was Harris, the city manager. His voice was frantic. Bernie, we have an emergency. You have to come in. The pressure is dropping citywide. I don't work for the city anymore, Harris, I said calmly. I was optimized, remember? I hung up. Next was the head of the city council. Then the union president, who I'd already spoken to. He was just playing his part. Bernie, they're in a real bind. You hold all the cards. I know, I said. Finally, around 2 p.m., the call I was waiting for. The caller ID said, Mayor's office. I wiped the sweat from my brow with the back of a dirty glove and answered. "Is this Bernard Kozlowski?" a woman's voice asked. It was Mayor Thompson herself. "It is." "Bernie," she said, dispensing with the formalities. "We have a serious situation at the water plant. We need you." I looked out over my garden. The bees were buzzing around Helen's roses. The world was quiet and peaceful here. "Mayor," I said, my voice even. I was under the impression my services were no longer required. Something about lacking digital fluency. "Bernie, please," she said. The panic was barely concealed beneath a layer of political polish. "Half the city is experiencing low water pressure. We're getting calls from the hospitals. The fire department is worried about hydrant pressure. This Tyler Pembroke, he doesn't know what he's doing." "No, he does not," I agreed. I let the silence stretch, let her feel the weight of it. "What will it take to get you back here?" she finally asked, the words tasting like defeat. This was the moment, the culmination of Stan's advice, of 32 years of swallowed pride and missed family dinners. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. It was about the value of a man's life's work. "I'll come back," I said, "but I have some terms. They are not negotiable." I could hear her take a deep breath. "I'm listening." "First," I said, plucking a small weed from beside a tomato plant, "Tyler Pembroke is fired, not reassigned. Fired. Effective immediately. I want him escorted from the property before I set foot on it." A pause. "Okay." "Second, my job is reinstated, not as chief operator, as plant superintendent. I will have final authority on all operational matters and personnel. No more optimization experts." "Done," she said quickly. "Third, my salary, it was $92,000 a year. You will increase it by 40%. My new salary will be $128,800. That's compensation for my institutional knowledge, which you now understand has a tangible value." I heard her whisper to someone in the room, probably the city attorney. After a moment, she came back. "Agreed." "Fourth, the city will issue a new vehicle for my use, a 2024 Chevy Silverado, 2,500, the diesel. My S10 is officially retired." Another shorter pause. "Bernie, is that really necessary?" "Yes," I said. "All right, fine. A truck." "And finally," I said, standing up and brushing the dirt from my knees, "this is the most important part. At the next televised city council meeting, the council president will read a formal public apology to me. It will state that my termination was a grievous error, that my 32 years of service were undervalued, and that the city deeply regrets the actions of its management. The wording will be approved by me in advance." The silence on the other end was long and heavy. This wasn't about money or power. This was about dignity. "You're asking for a public crucifixion, Bernie," she said, her voice low. "No, Mayor," I corrected her. "I'm asking for you to publicly correct a mistake. You can call it whatever you want. Those are my terms. Take them, or leave them. Meanwhile, the water pressure in your hospitals continues to drop." Another 30 seconds of dead air. I could hear the gears turning, the political calculations being made. A public health crisis versus a little bit of public humility. "The apology will be read," she said, her voice flat. "Just get down here. Now." "I'll be there in 45 minutes, I said. "Have Mr. Pembroke's office cleared out by the time I arrive." I hung up the phone. I walked inside, into the cool of the house. Helen was standing in the kitchen, holding a dish towel, her face a mask of concern. "I have to go to the plant," I said. "They fired you, Bernie." "They made a mistake," I said, walking to the sink to wash my hands. The dirt and grime swirled down the drain. "They're correcting it." I drove to the plant not in my old Chevy, but in Helen's Buick. I didn't want the satisfaction of pulling up in that truck just yet. As I came down the long drive, I saw a security guard standing by the gate. He saw my car, spoke into his radio, and lifted the gate without a word. My access was already restored. I parked in my old spot, right by the front door, the one that now had a little sign that read, Plant Superintendent. Someone had been busy. As I walked toward the entrance, the main doors opened, and 2 security guards walked out. Between them, looking small and defeated, was Tyler Pembroke. He was carrying a cardboard box with a laptop, a few books, and his framed Yale diploma sticking out of the top. His face was pale, his arrogant posture gone, replaced by a slumped, stunned disbelief. Our eyes met for a brief second. There was no triumph in me, just a quiet, cold satisfaction. I gave him a slow, deliberate nod. It was a nod of dismissal, a final optimization. He flinched, looked away, and hurried toward the parking lot, a man without a paradigm. I walked into the control room. It was exactly as I had pictured. Organized chaos. Harris was there, along with 2 council members. They all looked at me like I was a ghost. They started to talk at once. Bernie, thank God. The pressure in the West End is at 40 psi. I held up a hand. Everybody out, I said, my voice quiet but firm. All of you. Out of my control room. They stared at me, then at each other. Harris opened his mouth to protest. Now, I said, not raising my voice. My gaze was fixed on the auxiliary control panel. They scrambled out like mice. Only Dave remained. He looked exhausted, but a wave of relief washed over his face. Boss, he said, I'm glad you're here. What's your slurry mix? I asked, already scanning the gauges. 500 pounds of lime to 200 of soda ash. It's what the old spec sheet said. The spec sheet is for river water in the spring, I said, shaking my head. This is warm lake water after a dry spell. The alkalinity is all wrong. You're getting magnesium scale precipitation too early. It's clogging the injectors. I started flipping switches, turning dials. The muscle memory was instant. Cut the lime feed by 15%. Increase the soda ash by 10. And open bypass valve 7C to flush the lines. We'll run dirty for 10 minutes, then recalibrate. Dave rushed to comply. For the next 20 minutes, it was just me and the machine. I didn't need a computer. I listened to the changing pitch of the pumps. I watched the color of the water in the sight glass. I could smell the subtle shift in the air as the chemistry balanced. It was a language I had spent a lifetime learning. Slowly, the red lights on the panel blinked out, one by one. The blare of the alarms subsided into a steady, healthy hum. The needle on the main pressure gauge began to climb. It's stabilizing, Dave said, his voice filled with awe. It always does, I said. I picked up the phone and dialed the mayor's office. She answered on the first ring. It's Kozlowski. Your water is back on. I hung up before she could reply. The aftermath was quiet. The next day, I sat in the city attorney's office and signed my new contract. It was 5 years, ironclad. Section 4, paragraph 2 was my favorite part. It gave me sole and final authority over all plant operations. I signed it with my father's old silver Rolex fountain pen, the one I kept for important moments. 2 weeks later, I sat in the back row of the city council chambers. It was packed. The council president, a man who had avoided my calls, cleared his throat and began to read from a sheet of paper, his voice trembling slightly. The city council wishes to issue a formal apology to Mr. Bernard Kozlowski, he began. He read the entire statement, every word I had insisted upon. He spoke of my invaluable service, my unmatched expertise, and the grievous error in judgment that led to my brief dismissal. The cameras of the local news station recorded it all. When he was done, there was a moment of stunned silence, then a smattering of applause from the citizens in the audience. I didn't stay to hear it. I stood up, walked out of the chamber, and went home. That evening, I was home for dinner at 5:30. Helen had made pot roast. My new Chevy Silverado was parked in the driveway. The peace I felt wasn't about victory. It was the simple, profound satisfaction of being seen, of having the work of my hands, the knowledge in my head, finally acknowledged on a balance sheet. They had learned the difference between authority and control. Tyler Pembroke had a title. He had authority. But I had the keys. I had the knowledge. I had control. Loyalty is a two-way street. They thought they could just tear up their side of the pavement. They forgot I was the one who built the road in the first place, and I knew where all the sinkholes were. Some assets don't show up on a spreadsheet, and sometimes the most powerful tool in any negotiation is the ability to just walk away and go tend your own garden. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and leave a comment below telling me what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of sweet, sweet justice.